Hi, this is Jill Lewis from Jill Lewis Architecture, and you're listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. I'm Tom Guild. E. Fay Jones is a name most architects know, but the public does not. A student of Frank Lloyd Wright, Jones moved back to northwest Arkansas and created more than 130 buildings over a 35-year career, including the magnificent Thorn Crown Chapel. Like Wright, Jones blurred the line between indoors and outdoors with careful use of wood, stone, and glass. It's kind of like these buildings just emerged from the woods. In addition, he taught generations of architects at the University of Arkansas, and he won the AIA Gold Medal, one of architecture's highest honors. Today, we've got three people dedicated to preserving E. Fay Jones' legacy. David McKee worked for Jones and is now known as the Jones Whisperer, the go-to guy for restoring houses. He's also working on the Mildred B. Cooper Memorial Chapel campus expansion. We'll also talk with Jonathan Formanek, who created the E. Fay Jones Conservancy, along with his partner Andy Whitmore. They live in the Faubus house in Arkansas, one of Jones's largest residences. And back in the studio, we talk with influencer Maggie Weber, whose takes on bad design keep us laughing. And now your host, Mr. Modernism, George Smart.
Hey, thanks, Tom. Everyone, meet homeowner Janine. She's got a modest 1959 flat-roof mid-century modern house, a symphony, well, maybe a string quartet, of glass, steel, and magical thinking. The house has been on the market for 180 days. The high price remains untouched. It's a steal, Jill tells her bewildered realtor, Angela, for the 87th time. It's a work of art, and people should pay for that. Angela knows it's more of a heist than a steal, but she can't tell Janine her masterpiece is an overpriced angled box with a moldy patio. Janine has 1,000 excuses not to lower the price. They just don't get it, she says. The photos, they don't do it justice, she says, staring at the perfectly composed, professional images Angela paid a fortune for and reshot twice. They don't show the spiritual lightness, Janine says. That's because the only thing that's light is the number of offers, which is 0. Janine accuses Angela of not selling the lifestyle, of not taking ads out in the New York Times, and failing to have an open house every single weekend. Janine at one point blamed the wind direction and relative humidity for the lack of interest. Finally, Janine goes after our collective unconscious. The world just isn't ready for architectural purity, Janine mutters, and it's a sad commentary on humanity. Janine is not just selling a house, she's now offering a Rorschach test on everyone's aesthetics, and everyone is failing, badly. Even the garden gnomes, though, smirk with ridicule as Janine walks by. And Angela, the long-suffering realtor, has taken up yoga and Smirnoff just to get through Janine's daily phone calls. Because in the world of modernist magical thinking, everyone and everything is to blame, except the price. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs.
David McKee spent 16 years at Fay Jones & Associates before co-founding his own firm and eventually establishing McKee Architects. His projects range from offices to master plans, but he's especially known for preserving and extending Jones' legacy. McKee serves as consulting architect on the expansion of the Cooper Memorial Chapel, a striking building he helped construct while working for Jones back in the 1980s. He's also restored the Brothers Residence by Jones to its original integrity, earning preservation honors along the way. You can stay there if you want. Awarded the Fay Jones Legacy Medal, McKee continues to carry forward the Fay Way, an organic approach to architecture rooted in nature. Here's George's conversation with David McKee.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for coming on the show.
I'm happy to be here.
Now, you are essentially the Fay Jones whisperer of his houses. I mean, everybody who I talked to down in Fayetteville and Bentonville about Fay Jones, your name comes up in the conversation every single time. And I understand that you work with Jones for about 16 years?
That's correct.
So tell me how you first met him and how you guys started to work together.
Well, I grew up in Bentonville, just up the road, and Fay had previous projects there that I was aware of, working for the Waltons and the Enfields, and I was in high school. We played golf at the Bella Vista Country Club, so the name Fay Jones was very well known around the village of Bentonville. So I was very familiar with his work, and then just kind of moved down the hill. And when I was in architecture school, previously I'd gotten an art degree, painting, sculpture, that sort of thing, and did a Back to the Land movement with some other friends from Bentonville in the early 70s. Went back to architecture school. And Fay was a professor at that time, although I didn't have the chance to have a studio course with him. We would meet in the halls, and we kind of knew each other from the Bentonville connection. So when I graduated, I interviewed with Fay, and we kind of had a lot of things in common with tree houses and stonemasonry and Bentonville. And so he gave me a position there that just was at the right place at the right time. There were people that were moving on. In those days, graduates from mostly the School of Architecture there at the University of Arkansas would want to work for Fay for a couple of years, then, move on, have that on your resume. But I really didn't want to move, so I stuck it out. And just by the natural, people moving on, the change in personnel in the studio, wasn't too many years before I, was like number three out of five, maybe. So it was never a big office. There was 4 or 5 people in the office at any one time. Fay liked to keep it that way. I wouldn't say he was a micromanager, but he liked to be involved in every project as much as he can. But, by that time this would have been the early 80s. I joined the firm in 82, but he was traveling quite a bit, lecture tour. He had won the American Academy in Rome fellowship. So he and Gus, his wife, would go over there for a month or more every year. So he kind of left the homeboys in charge there. Maurice Jennings became his partner, and then I was made an associate in 86. So, we tried doing our best to keep Fay informed of what was going on. And when he was available, he was, a great inspiration to be around and to work for. He had such a body of experience at that time. He was a teacher at heart. So the studio was set up almost like a classroom studio environment. He would circulate, look at the drawings progressing. Oftentimes with me, he would hand out one of his earlier sketches, which the whole idea was, okay, well, let's, put this to some kind of scale. With my experience with a degree in art, I got to be, at that early end of the creative process. But then very quickly it turned into more hardline drawings, and then moving on to working drawings, construction documents. And I had been in the trades during my art degree completion. And so kind of having one foot in construction, pretty early I got to go to job sites and be involved working with the trades that were putting our visions together. So, Fay was always just a delightful guy. Scholar and a gentleman is the best way to describe Fay. So, I was very fortunate to end up where I did in Fay's office because it fit my abilities very well.
Now, before you started working with Fay Jones, he had become very well known for a place called Thorn Crown Chapel, which is near to you in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Tell our listeners about that building.
That building was at the very final stages. When I started with Fay, I got to work on Thorn Crown Chapel. I joke about that because I was involved in assisting with the pathway lighting. So, the building was there and it was already, receiving all sorts of acclaim. Very inspiring piece of architecture. Not too long after that, it must have been 85, 86, the Cooper Chapel was just up the road in Bella Vista, Arkansas, probably 30 miles from Thorncrown Chapel. We had a commission to do another chapel, but it was done in more of a Gothic party. Fay, lead designer, he never wanted to repeat, the same thing, except for the inspiration is with chapels that began with Thorncrown was the verticality, the interior volume, the light, the transparency being in nature. I always thought of, I still do think of Thorncrown as a very Zen kind of building where less is more is the beauty of it. And then when we did Cooper Chapel, going with the Gothic inspired design is more ornate. More is more in this case. But then, we did other chapels, but it was always changing things up a little bit. But it was total design. We do the structural design ourselves. When it got pretty hairy later in the days, we would employ a structural engineer to make sure we're doing everything right. But Thorncrown still probably has a place in my heart, being the very first one. Oftentimes when I talk to people about, Fay's work and the various chapels, people want to say, well, which one do you like best? And I remember Fay being asked that very question. His answer was predictably, well, the next one. So it was always kind of thinking, moving forward and not thinking that you're done with the creative process, that there's more goals to be obtained.
I visited Thorncrown Chapel in the summer of this year and just found it fascinating. Two little aspects of it I wanted to mention. One is it made it to the National Register of Historic Places in less than 30 years. Which is some kind of speed record. Very few buildings get that kind of honor so quickly.
Well, American Institute of Architects voted it one of the greatest all-time architectural. You have to check my history on this, but it ranks highly with the architectural community as iconic buildings in the history of American architecture. So that's quite an achievement for fellow architects to think so highly of that building.
And this is a really nerdy thing to talk about, but I was fascinated by the way that Thorncrown Chapel is cooled, because along the sides of it, there are these sort of stone, what would you call them, that are at the edges of the building?
Well, there's natural outcroppings, fairly in close proximity to the actual footprint of the building, but you may be talking about the
way the air conditioning works. There's a heating and air conditioning unit that is off from the chapel. You can't see it.
It's remote.
And then underground, it pipes in through, and you can't even tell how it's happening because the air is coming through these very small slits in the stone.
Right.
It was just amazing.
Yeah, the stone wall where the glass line comes down onto the low stone walls, and there's a cavity, a plenum in there where the ductwork is incorporated into the actual structure of the building. So you don't see any registers. And the trick there was that we would place pieces of insulation board stock where the grout joints would be in the stone walls. So the air flows out in the what would be the mortar joints, but no mortar in those side stone walls. So, and then the return air was actually incorporated into the cabinetry at the front of the building. So it was all highly integrated. And of course, then the custom sconces that line each side of the building. There's this really cool phenomenon where, because of the glass on the perimeter walls, you see the reflection. The sconces have a cross shape integrated into them. So you get this incredible effect of the light bouncing back and forth between the glass, and it actually goes out into the landscape. So it's a really marvelous thing to see these little cross shapes, little bits of photons, punched out into the surrounding landscape. But yeah, it's all about integrating mechanical systems, electrical systems, and the part in the whole.
So there's Thorncrown Chapel, there's Cooper Chapel, which you're working now on a new addition there. How many chapels did Jones do?
There were probably, I'm going to say 5. Let me think. Thorncrown and Cooper, the Marty Leonard Chapel down in Fort Worth. There's a large funeral chapel, to be honest, complete with columbarium in Whittier, California. So there's 4. There was a chapel at the University of the South in Sewanee, Tennessee that Maurice and I did. But I mean, let's face it, it was Fay's reputation that got our foot in the door.
Yeah.
Anthony Chapel and the Hot Springs. Again, that was something that was done after Fay had retired, but they're all inspired, beginning with Thorncrown. Basically, the Gothic, the classic Greek cross, the transepts and the apse, nave, that whole formula of a floor plan, which is a very archetypical kind of form that people can identify with when they walk into a space like that. You think of Gothic, and you think of so many of the churches around the world these days, but the beauty of those buildings is that they're singular. They're not encumbered by, fellowship halls and classrooms, and their simple floor plan is their beauty, I think. They're standalone. They're not encumbered by additions. And just to clarify, the work that I'm doing at the Cooper Chapel campus, we wouldn't dare do any kind of addition onto the chapel itself, but
Right.
This is basically a standalone building, calling it the Welcome Center, but it's primarily a new office space. There is an existing office space on the campus, but it's not ADA accessible. So I joke about it, but we're providing the public with accessible bathrooms and then an office, and there's a small conference lounge area where the bride and her attendants can get ready for a wedding ceremony just down the path.
Well, these chapels are just rock stars of the marriage world, I see.
Well, yeah, it seems like there's a rush for people to build wedding chapels. Every month I see some announcement of some people are going to give it a go. Sometimes they're an enhanced barn structure. Sometimes they're just a simple arbor out in the forest, which is not so different from, the way that the whole chapel design concept began back early days of Christianity. I'm afraid there's going to be we may be overbuilding wedding chapels. I don't know.
You can visit these chapels, of course, which are free and are just spectacular. But if you want to stay in one, Dave owns one. It's called the Brothers Residence in Fayetteville, Arkansas. It's also known as the Gray. And you rent it out. You renovated it, and people stay there. I've had several friends that have stayed there. I've visited it with you. It's fantastic. Tell us about this house.
Well, the Brothers Residence, first phase was designed and built in 1956, 57. And there was an addition done onto it in 68, which Fay was involved in. I've known the house since before I started working with Fay, because I was fortunate through some other connections at the architecture school to travel with Richard and Alma Brothers to Europe, of people connected with the Unitarian Church. And Richard Brothers, who was a choral director at the University of Arkansas, and his wife was a former opera singer. They led these trips to Europe. Richard was the conductor of the Schola Cantorum, a very accomplished a cappella singing group, won all sorts of awards, and traveled Italy primarily. We got back, and I started with Fay. I knew the brothers already from that trip. And when they would have some issue concerning their house, Fay would say, "Hey, Dave, can you go talk with Richard and Alma?" Which I was happy to do. The brothers sold the house. My kids, all 3, lived in that house during their college years as house sitters. And then I did some work for Ken and Liz Allen, who own another Fay Jones house known as the Lamont Clark House, also in Fayetteville. Well, they bought the house from Gary. We ended up buying the house from Ken and Liz Allen, who were basically just wanted to see the house preserved. It was starting to show its 60 years age. So we formed a family partnership, and we put about 2 years into restoring it. We're doing the Airbnb thing with it, which allows us to be able to use it ourselves, from time to time. We usually do Thanksgiving there, but we step aside during football season when the Razorbacks are playing. 3 blocks away is Razorback Stadium. So if you want to have an architecture experience as well as a sports, experience watching the Hogs.
What a great combination.
It's fun, but we get year-round bookings, usually from architectural enthusiasts.
How do people find out more about it?
Well, it's an Airbnb listing. We call it the Fay on Gray. You can go to my website, David McKee Architect. There's several ways to get there. There's pictures. We've been lucky enough to win some preservation awards. We're just currently going through the LIDAR mapping process. We're applying for National Register Historic Places. It's pretty much built, although there will probably be a phase 2 that maybe the tax break we can get from the National Register might help us out. But it's a lot of pride in the way that it turned out. There was a influencer that was here not too long ago that had been to Crystal Bridges to look at the new addition up there and talk to some of the players. And he booked at the Fay on Gray. And in the little book, he wrote that it was the best experience of his whole trip to Arkansas. So,
Awesome.
When you got an influencer telling you how great the stay was, then gives you a warm fuzzy for sure.
So, Dave, to sum up, what's the legacy of Fay Jones, and why should people care about his work?
Well, I think there's a certain honesty in his approach to architecture, as his legacy was continuing in his own way from Frank Lloyd Wright into his interpretation of organic architecture. And there's just a certain honesty in the approach to design. I think of it as a Mid-South kind of response to available materials. We think about, LEED certification and those kinds of things that, it's all about trying to build with local materials. Well, I think the projects exemplify that approach, and the, integration with the site. There's just lots of lessons that you can really grasp without a lot of effort in the design approach. There's not a lot of tricks. There's not a lot of guess what I can do with a palette of materials. So it's very approachable, very human in its aesthetic.
You can see all the E. Fay Jones houses at usmodernist.org/fjones. That's FJONES. Dave, thanks so much for coming on the show.
You're more than welcome. I enjoyed it.
That was George with the Fay Jones whisperer, David McKee. Jonathan Formanek and Andy Whitmore, the president and director of the Fay Jones Conservancy, lead a nonprofit dedicated to preserving and celebrating the work of the legendary architect. Formanek is a longtime collector and advocate for Jones designs, and Whitmore brings strategic and operational expertise to the Conservancy. Together, they have been leading initiatives to keep Jones' legacy alive. Most recently, they organized the Conservancy's inaugural home tour in Fayetteville, Arkansas, showcasing 4 beautifully preserved homes designed by Jones. Their work also supports educational and restoration projects that ensure his architecture continues to inspire future generations. George sat down with Jonathan Formanek and Andy Whitmore in their kitchen for a chat.
Jonathan, you have been associated with architecture a long time. We found a reference on the internet about where you put together an exhibition brochure for Paul Rudolph in 1967, and you were a super fan, weren't you?
I was very much a super fan. I had accepted a college invitation to Kenyon, and at the last minute called. I had already decided that I would go to Colgate because they were doing a Paul Rudolph building.
Oh.
I wanted to see it under construction, and I went home that day and told my parents, and they were sort of horrified, like, you did what? And And I said, I have preferences.
What was that exhibition all about?
It was about space. Rudolph had written a great deal about creating space. And so the architecture exhibit, with the help of Joseph Molitor, Paul Rudolph, Ezra
The photographer,
Stoller.
Joseph Molitor.
Correct.
Right?
Ezra Stoller.
Another great photographer.
Yeah. Actually, what happened was I just called out of the blue to Rudolph's office and said, I'm a Colgate student. I'd like to do an exhibition of your work. He said, come to New York. I did. I walked in the studio, and I was absolutely amazed at the space. Rudolph was floating up on the upper level, cantilevered over the 4-story space. And I thought, do I want to sit down there? I might fall, but I didn't.
Now, how old were you at that time?
Oh, 18.
18? Wow.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of initiative.
I think it just takes a lot of interest in the spaces that he was creating. He was very hot at the time in the magazines, and I still remember that there was a picture of the Colgate building in probably Record, and I thought, I want to see that building. And that's how I made up my decision.
And did you connect with Rudolph then over the next couple of years, or did you fall away from that?
Actually, I left the country for 4 years, 6 years, and then moved to Tennessee and did not see Rudolph for many years until I was in my 50s. And at the time, I had a wonderful glass box house in Memphis, all glass walls, and I said, I want an addition. And I worked on Variation 27 and said, this is ridiculous. How am I ever going to make up my mind? And I was in New York and decided to stop by and see Paul Rudolph. He said, let's have lunch. And he said, I don't do that type of work anymore. And I said, well, come to Memphis. And he did, with a tiny, tiny little satchel that didn't hold anything but a shirt. He climbed up on the roof and 3 days later called from the airport and said, I was sketching on a napkin coming back. What do you think about a couple of pavilions? And, you said you wanted a greenhouse on the roof. You said it didn't matter where you entered the house. You could enter through the bathroom. And I've drawn up some stuff. I'll send it to you. And he sent me these things that hit everything I had talked about. Absolutely every weird thought that came to my mind. And when I finally got the drawings, I said, Paul, you put the greenhouse on the roof. How am I going to get the earth up there? And he said, you didn't see the dumbwaiter? So he had thought of everything.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Now, that house, was that a house you had commissioned by another architect, or what was that glass house all about?
No, the glass house was actually in the tallest part of Memphis. So you could see downtown if you got high enough. It was on the only street in Memphis that was one lane. It only had 6 houses. It was in the woods. So it was a beautiful positioned house. And it had been designed by an architect who claimed not to have the plans. So I was a little confused by that. But I thought it needed to be expanded, as everybody who's 40 years old does. I don't really think it probably did need to be. But I had envisioned a library and a study and a separate living room, etc. I went to Rudolph and said, here are some ideas. And normally I would think he wouldn't pick up on any of them. And quite to the contrary, he picked up on each idea and actually made it a reality.
Did you finish the work? Did he do the project for you?
No, unfortunately. About 8 months later, the Fay Jones house I was staying at, I suddenly bought. And about a year after that, Rudolph died.
Ah, okay.
So this is probably his penultimate project.
Well, you certainly turned this house that we're recording the show in to an amazing property. When did you buy this house? Was it 89 or 94?
95.
95, okay. And what kind of condition was it in when you got here?
The house structurally was in fine condition. Unfortunately, it had been lived in by various people with some odd taste to put lace curtains and little French provincial furniture into it. It had Barca loungers, large screen projection TVs blocking the windows. They had painted the house a fudge sickle brown. They had never really done anything with the outside landscaping. The house is on a bluff, and the bluff had been chain link fenced in. And all those things seemed odd to me, and I was very concerned that the house would not be taken care of. The other people who were by the front door bidding, I was not bidding. I was way out in the lawn.
You were just happened to be in the right place at the right time?
Yeah. It was being run as a bed and breakfast, and I was staying here. And they wouldn't.
And the auction was happening while you were staying here.
Right. And they wouldn't let me down the driveway because it's only one way into the property, and cars were coming up. And I had never been to an auction. They gave me a paddle. And I said, oh, okay, it's very hot, But when the bidding stopped, I suddenly raised my paddle, and bam, 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 I owned the house. And I remember looking across the roof, and it was 7,000 square feet of jumbo wood-shake shingles, 220 feet long, and I had lived in a nice little glass box of 1,400 square feet. And I thought, what have I done? Well, that didn't last long. It was a beautiful night.
No buyer's remorse, really.
Well, it was a full moon night. It was October 1, and I wandered inside and outside all night. And the house has 27 doors. I wandered out onto the cantilevered overlook over a bluff, and I remember looking back thinking, well, anybody can buy a house. I didn't know I could buy a bluff. And that sort of sealed the deal for me. I drove 7 o'clock into Fayetteville and met Fay Jones, the architect, and said, I bought the house last night, and I have no regret at all. And that was 30 years ago.
Andy, fast forward to today. What are some of the things that you have to pay closest attention to in owning a house like this in terms of maintenance or repairs or things like that?
It's cleaning, mostly just cleaning. Do spiderweb patrol or, just keeping it looking great.
Yeah.
So it's just basically deep cleaning, and it's an easy house to take care of. There's not a lot of issues with it. You don't have a lot of maintenance going on other than, a roof every 25 years, right?
Correct.
Or we've had no plumbing issues to speak of.
Water leak kind of problems?
No, had a water faucet outside leak a couple of times that had it replaced, but it's a pretty easy house, other than tinkering with toilets or dusting all day. It's an easy house to live in, very easy.
And 220 feet, that's a long house. So it has sections. I've been walking through them as I've been here. How would you describe for our listeners what the sections of the house are?
Well, it's sort of like walking through a jumbo jet because it's just as long as the largest jumbo jet. And there's one straight hallway. With that, there's an exterior walkway. And the exterior walkway actually penetrates through the living room and brings you into the house and then back out the house. Everything is off one corridor. And that it penetrates through the bedroom, it penetrates through the living room. And otherwise, all the rooms are off that one hallway. And you go from the kitchen end to essentially the library end. The house is only 3 bedrooms, but the rooms are large. It was meant for entertaining, and it was meant for very gracious living. So as you are in any of the rooms, you always have access outside. There are 27 doors to the exterior. The house always draws you in and out. And it's also great for cross-ventilation when it's not hot and humid. In addition to the 3 bedrooms, there's just a study, an office, a breakfast room, a den, and then a living room and a master bedroom. So it's very simple.
Yeah, he's minimizing really a lot of the description here, folks, because the master bedroom is emphasizing master. It is masterful. It has sections in the bedroom. So, Andy, tell me about the master bedroom, because it's amazing.
It's like a house in itself, in a sense. It has a step-down, sunken living room. It has a library attached to it. It has 2 bathrooms. It's rather large, very large. It's a house in itself, the master bedroom is.
And it's so relaxing because one of the signatures of E. Fay Jones' houses is the way he brings light in to a room. So you've got a totally relaxing experience in this.
Correct.
We were sitting there last night just chatting, and Jonathan and I were on one side of it, and you were over on the other side. And it was like, we were at the living room of another house, like you said.
Correct. Yeah, it's very comfortable.
People have actually been on the overlook and said, your neighbors are awfully close. And I have to say, no, that's my bedroom.
That's pretty funny. In the last couple of years, you have taken on the joy, really, of opening up your house to the public to come and see the tours. How do those work? How do people arrange to come and see it?
You go to the website, FayJonesConservancy.org, and pick a date, pick a time. There are many dates throughout the summer and fall and spring. We're pretty much closed down in the winter, but otherwise there are sunset tours because, as you mentioned, the house has varied light, and there are times of day when the light is absolutely marvelous, and it will light up the room in various ways, and because it's almost tactile, you can feel the light. We thought that was very special. We also are going to develop a moonlight tour because full moons in this house are very special.
I bet.
The moonlight also comes through, and then we have a garden that has a maze with very tall plumes. And when the plumes light up white and you're walking through the maze, there's a magic with the moon. There's a magic to the place.
And we're in Huntsville, which most people think is in Alabama, but there's actually a Huntsville, Arkansas.
Correct.
Which is about an hour east of Fayetteville and Bentonville. Why did this house, this magnificent 220-foot-long house, get built here? What's its history?
Well, remember, 220 feet sounds long, but it's only half as long as Jeff Bezos' new yacht, okay?
Well, thank you for putting that in context, sir.
The property was originally belonging to Isaac Murphy, who is the Reconstruction governor of Arkansas. So there have actually been two governors, the second being Orville Faubus, who bought this property in the 50s. And he built the house with Fay Jones. He, I think, had a special sensitivity to nature and the bluff. The whole property is on a bluff. And when I talked to them, said, well, you'd never know it when you are approaching the house. The house is on the flat. And the surprise is when you enter, and then suddenly you realize the entire width of the house is cantilevered above the bluff. And there's actually a bridge out over the bluff.
Yeah.
And you're hovering 65 feet above the ground.
That's incredible.
Yep.
That's really incredible. Was he looking at this as a future governor's mansion, or why did he build such a big house here?
This was his retirement home, but as many politicians, Faubus never really wanted to retire. He wanted to run again.
Okay.
And he asked for a house that he could entertain in. He only had one son. He didn't need a lot of bedrooms. He didn't have staff of any sort. So the house really evolved. The early drawings just show a living room, a couple of bedrooms, one room, a cruciform sort of shape. And I think it was Faubus's son, Farrell, who, in consultation with the architect, kept extending the house until its elongated shape as it is today.
Andy, tell me about the Fay Jones Conservancy. And beyond having tours for this house, what is it trying to do as an organization?
To get Fay Jones recognized for the many works that he's done. Jonathan, how many is in Fayetteville alone for Fay Jones?
There are 57 in northwest Arkansas within an hour's drive. And that's an incredible number. That's a little bit less than one half of his existing work. And there are 134 existing buildings. Originally, he designed 224 projects, 137 were built, and 57 are right here in northwest Arkansas.
So we're really trying just to get it shared back, the work shared back, to let people know that Thorncrown Chapel's here and Cooper and all the other wonderful buildings that he's built, just to reintroduce him.
It's really an incredible experience. These two have taken me around this last couple of days to see buildings, including Thorncrown Chapel and Cooper Chapel, which I had never heard of before. there's almost a trail that you could follow over a couple hours to see these kinds of things.
Yes.
Definitely.
You want to get more E. Fay Jones fans to come out and see it.
Yes.
Not only E. Fay Jones fans, but to let people know who he was.
Just
He
reintroducing.
was the AIA Gold Medal winner, and he was the Dean of the School of Architecture, and he was an incredible human being. I think also there were a number of mid-century modern architects who worked at the university at the time and also in the community, and they are not well known. And then the School of Architecture that Fay was in the first graduating class has grown to 1,000 students and is a fantastic school.
It's called the Fay Jones School now, right?
It has been named the Fay Jones School.
Fay Jones School of
Or
Architecture.
the Fay Jones School of Architecture, I should say.
Okay.
And it is producing some phenomenal work. As this community is one of the fastest growing in America, it is actually taking advantage of the architectural talent that's here. And in addition to Fay, we have a second gold medal winner, Marlon Blackwell. Marlon's office has done an incredible number of buildings with crystal bridges and the surrounding communities, interpreting architecture in the Ozark vernacular. Other architects are beginning to take on the challenge of our native community, which is an oak hickory forest full of bluffs and clean rivers. These are unique opportunities to have architects take on.
The website is efayjonesconservancy.org. Gentlemen, thank you so much. This has been an extraordinary visit.
Thank you, George.
Thank you, George.
Maggie Weber, known online as @refashionedhippie on Instagram, is a Philadelphia entrepreneur, author, and advocate for sustainable design. She's gained a following for her sharp, humorous critiques of bad fashion and design, with popular segments like Designing for Humans. Through her commentary, Maggie highlights the absurdities of poorly thought-out design and promoting eco-conscious living, all while running her online thrift store, refashionedhippie.shop, and supporting charitable causes. And she's pretty darn funny. Here's George's conversation with Maggie Weber.
Maggie, I noticed that you open all of your segments the same way with this great hello. Where did you get this hello from?
Honestly, it's kind of become a tagline of mine. It was never intended to be. I'm just so dumb when it comes to the internet that it felt rude to not introduce myself. And then people really liked it. So if I don't say it, I get angry emails. So now I say it.
No, you say it. And it's sort of a combination I sort of hear of like Newman on Seinfeld when he would say, hello, Jerry. And you've got a little Barbara Stanwyck in there from the 40s. It's great.
I mean, it makes me feel a little devious, which I like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not at all, but I like to pretend.
Well, you described yourself as somewhat having a component in your brain of a 13-year-old boy. There is a 13-year-old boy in there somewhere?
Listen, I've become the person that when thousands of people see something phallic shaped, they email me.
Yeah.
I can't deny that. That is now an objective truth. Like, I'm going to try to keep this as clean as possible, but when somebody sees something shaped like a dick, they think of me.
Well, let me ask you then. I have always wondered for years, why isn't there more uproar about the Amazon symbol? I mean, it's purely that, isn't it?
I know. I know. Well, my favorite is always like, I've been on a number of church councils, and I'm the one who says, like, maybe we should change this. Maybe, guys, like, so yeah, I've got that 13-year-old boy in my brain.
What channels can people see you talking about bad design on? I know you're on Facebook. Where else are you?
So I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and I just started my own Patreon so that I can do my content my way. The Patreon is absolutely free. You can choose to give me money, which of course I encourage you to do. But Refashioned Hippie on all of those platforms. Please come find me. It's fun.
Now, you have some favorite segments. One of them is called Designing for Humans.
Mm-hmm.
What have you found in that category that's interesting?
That some designers don't know how many arms a human woman has. It also seems like designer and luxury brands determine their prices by rolling a number of dice, because it is insane and astronomical. But the thing that offends me the most as a woman and as a fashion critic is the amount of clothing that is made for women to seemingly just stand there.
Tell me more about that. How does that work?
So I'm a mother of a 6-year-old. If something doesn't have pockets, don't waste my time. I have to be very active with my child. And there are so many outfits made by designers where it's like, that woman cannot sit down. She cannot eat. She cannot use her hands. She certainly can't pee. That's going to take a team of people. So it really offends me that there's so many designers who are like, you don't exist outside of standing in a room for me to look at, right? This is a great dress for you. Like, I don't know how familiar you are with Balenciaga.
Well, I've seen your segments on Balenciaga, and I know it's a very expensive habit to have.
So Kim Kardashian, who's not one of my favorite humans, dresses in Balenciaga a lot. They pay her to wear their clothing a lot. She wore the Balenciaga tape, which is literally just duct tape that says Balenciaga. So they taped her up in it in a full body, and her assistant had to cut her out of it because she almost pooped herself.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know if that counts as clothing.
You've also pointed out bad design features of buildings and houses. What are some of the things you find there?
Again, it's really the non-functionality that gets to me the most. Because there's little things like having a carpeted bathroom, which I feel like that's psychotic. I don't understand that at all.
That's crazy.
But then there's big things. I mean, I'm sure you've seen more than I have, my goodness. But there's some crazy stuff out there, buddy.
Well, my favorite is the house that has turrets, as if it's a medieval castle.
Hey, you and I are going to fight about that, though, because I would love to live in a house.
Well, if it's an actual castle, yes. But
I mean, okay. But like, my ideal home has a moat and a trebuchet. So you and I are going to part ways.
okay, well, I'll look for some original additions for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Your other interest is a segment called Fashion My Boobs Laugh At, which is about designer clothes not built for, as my great aunt would say, women of ample bosom.
Yes.
What's that all about?
So I know the people in Radioland cannot see me, but Jessica Rabbit, in terms of the upstairs, is not inaccurate. Like, I'm a well-endowed woman, and there's so much clothing that seems to be made for a body standard that does not exist. For example, you can, for $2,700, literally buy a leather feather that has a band attached to it, much like a belt. And that is your top.
That's the whole top?
That's the whole top. It's about the size of like an eagle feather. It's a fairly large feather, but still not good enough. And to mock that, I strapped 10 rubber chickens to my chest because that's what I need for coverage.
Do you have a picture of that?
I have a reel. It's up.
Oh, it's up.
Yeah.
Okay. And I read recently that your boobs have gotten you in a little trouble with one of our major internet providers. What's that story?
So unfortunately, I had a YouTube channel with nearly 500,000 subscribers that YouTube has permanently deleted because they say I violated their nudity and sexually gratifying content rules. I obviously take objection to this and I'm fighting them on it because YouTube logic is very strange. I have literally danced in a bikini and YouTube said that was completely fine.
Because everybody does that, right? Pretty much.
I mean, what you and I do on the weekends is no one's business. But yeah, I mean, you can see worse content, certainly. But dancing in a bikini was completely fine. Wearing a black tank top that showed cleavage was unacceptable. So the rules don't make a ton of sense. I also got a knock for doing a reel where I showed women in underwear because I was ridiculous underwear from Fredericks of Hollywood, which they said violated their sexually gratifying content rule again. The issue that I took with that was those were ads that I received on YouTube.
Ah. Touché.
What I am discovering and what other creators are unfortunately discovering is that everybody's using AI now to flag content. If you are a full-figured, curvy woman, such as myself, the AI flags your images as sexually gratifying, where it does not flag smaller women.
Okay.
And you and I can get into a debate about this, but what exactly is sexual gratification in an image? Because for some people, that's a picture of my feet. And I've met those people. They DM me. I can't get them to stop. So for a computer to determine this image is sexually gratifying, like, it's kind of nice that Skynet is afraid of my boobs, but I don't really know what to do with that.
Is there any way you can weaponize them and fight back?
Oh, I'm trying. Don't worry about that. But no, I mean, I'm laughing about it, but it's very scary because that's a huge portion of my business. And what upsets me the most is the channel's just gone. So I can't tell people where I am or what happened. I mean, some people think I died. I've had people contact me and say, "Are you dead?" And I text back that either I'm not or grab a pointy stick. So it's very unfortunate.
Is there an alternative to YouTube where you could repost your old postings from there?
So I have created my own Patreon, and I am starting to do that so that I can do it my way, and I can still go live once a week with the comments section and show you the worst of modern fashion. But unfortunately, it seems like one of the places I could go is OnlyFans, which I don't want to do.
Yeah, that's a whole nother ballgame right there.
It is. It certainly is.
And then the feet people will really be all over you.
I mean, I can't stop them now, friend. Like,
you have an online thrift store, which you've had for a long time, called refashionhippie.shop.
I do. So I have just merch that you can get with some of my dumb sayings on it. But what I really love doing is getting to upcycle boring clothing. And that's something that I actually do with my 6-year-old daughter. And she gets to keep a portion of the money that we make. A portion of it goes to the charity of her choice, because I want her to understand that a person can have an effect no matter how young they are and no matter how, forgive me, 6-year-old, unskilled they are. So
Yes.
We like bleach painting. We like resewing things. We made Mommy and Me skirts out of clothing that no longer fits her so that she can still keep all of the cute unicorn, glittery shirts that she loves that she can't wear anymore. I love upcycling. I love recycling. And I love having my audience be a part of that. And the coolest thing to me in the world is when I'm on social media and I see somebody wearing something that I made. That is just, so cool. I love it.
Well, you have won a 2021 Poshmark Heart and Hustle Community Award, which is given for small businesses led by women. You're also an author. I really want to order this book, Why I Hate Everything, Reflections of a Decade in Retail. So what are some of the biggest things that you hate in retail, Maggie?
Customers. I mean, the book is really a love letter and hate mail to working retail. And if you've ever worked retail, if you've ever worked in the food service industry, you have stories. And you have stories that if you submitted them as fiction, people would be like, nah, this is crazy. No one will buy this. When I was 15 and got my first job, I started writing down some of those stories. And then I did that for the next 10 years. And I have had people try to throw a cash register at my head. I have gotten into some of the most insane arguments in my life. There's a lot in there about hiring teenagers, because the places that I worked, I had to hire a lot, and I had to hire a lot of teenagers. And working somebody through their first job is a wonderful thing, to see somebody grow in their confidence. But also teenagers suck. So having to be the boss of a teenager. And in my last job, everyone called me mom. I was 26. I was 26. At the age of 26, I was the old woman. I was the wizened crone of Francesca's. Yeah. So it's an experience.
With so many examples of bad design in your posts, what advice can you give product designers out there?
Thank you. This is my most important message to the world. First of all, and I mean this, show your design to a panel of 13-year-old boys. If they laugh or they remain completely silent, change it. Go to Urban Dictionary. Type in the words of your new slogan. If any entry comes up, change it. But overall, show people. Just show people. You don't always have to take their advice, but show people.
Because the meanings of these things change so quickly, right?
Yes.
And something that might have been okay in 1989 is completely different now.
Yeah. I mean, don't just stick with a mistake because you spent a lot of time and money making it. Sometimes it's worth it to change the name of your business. And there are things like masturbate and tackle. That's intentional. I get that. That's fine. But like...
Masturbate and tackle, that's a fishing shop, I guess?
It is, in fact. It's a chain of them. But again, like that was done intentionally. I get that. But slang changes quickly. And sometimes you don't want your business to be named things.
Okay. Well, this has been delightful, Maggie. Best of luck to you in getting back onto YouTube.
Thank you.
And I know we'll be seeing more of you somewhere soon.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs. Okay, Maggie, take us out.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 25,000 significant modernist houses, and access 5 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song was performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl, with guest research by Bobby Morris. Got a great guest like me to suggest for the show? Write her at bobby@usmodernist.org. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive, Inc., a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Maggie Weber of Bad Design on Facebook and Patreon. George and Tom will be back soon with another edition of U.S. Modernist Radio.
Am I out of a job?
No.